Hey guys, today we're going to talk about feed motors, how to replace them, and the basic process of what that looks like. So we've got two feed motors on our Pintruder HF saw. We've got a travel feed motor and an arm feed motor. Now if you've got a motor sitting around the shop and you wonder if it's the right motor for the application, there are two options. They're both different motors, they're different sizes, and they're different ratios. The travel feed motor is a 21-to-1 ratio, and the arm feed motor is a 43-to-1 ratio. If you have a motor sitting around, they are laser engraved. So go ahead and get your parts on order from customer service now. Motors, the motor comes with the O-ring ready to install and the wires already attached. There are O-rings at the bottom of the assembly to protect your motors from dust and debris in the field. There's also a keyway that would be worth ordering because we're going to take the parts off the old motor, the worm gear, the thrust washers, and the other parts and pieces and install them on our new motor. So go ahead and order a new keyway because sometimes those get boogered up when we take them apart. I'm going to solicit the help of a buddy to get the top of this assembly off. We're going to take the screws out of the top of it and lift it. So if you have a friend sitting by, go ahead and grab them, offer a cup of coffee to get some help because holding this assembly up and disconnecting the wires makes life a lot easier. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing ready to disassemble. We'll be right back. Using a 5mm Allen, I'm going to remove the 4 screws on the top of the travel feed motor and the 4 Allens on the top of the arm feed motor. Now, these housing assemblies have an O-ring on the bottom of them. If I rock them up and I'm careful, lifting straight up with just a little gentle pressure, I can get these covers removed off the top. If you have a buddy here, this is a great place to solicit his help to hold the top of these housings so you can disconnect the 2 wires on each motor. There's a red wire and a blue wire. They're blade style connectors and they're pretty easy to disconnect. But note, when we put this back together, we need to make sure we get those wires right. With the assembly out of our way, we can remove the 2 screws that hold each motor in place. Using a 4mm Allen, we'll remove the 2 motor screws from the chassis. Now this travel feed motor has a worm gear at the bottom of the assembly. If we use a pair of channel locks and we gently rotate the travel gear, we'll extend our motor or raise our motor out so we can have access to it. You'll feel your travel motor disengage out of the worm gear assembly, and you can grab the top of it with a pair of channel locks and gently pull it out. Try not to tug on the top of your wires as you're disassembling the assembly. Now I'm going to get this cleaned up and I'll show you how to take the parts off of it and get them back assembled onto your new motor. Alright, I'm getting ready to swap everything over to our new motor. The keyway assembly has to come off the old motor, go onto the new one. A lot of times I just like to order a new one because these do get boogered up when we take them apart. Now, we've got a thrust washer and an axial needle roller. 2 of them actually, 2 thrust washers and 1 needle roller that create the assembly on the back of this motor. Now this is really important. There's 2 different thrust washers. They're laser engraved GS and WS. When you look at them with the naked eye, the only difference between them is 0.5 of a millimeter, so I can't tell the difference by looking at them, which is why they're laser engraved. Take a look at the pic on the screen right now so you can see the order that we're going to reassemble this motor. Now, using a little bit of marine grease, I'm going to put just a little bit of grease on the shaft, and I'm actually going to use it as a cheater tool to hold this assembly together. When we set the motor back in upside down, some of this marine grease will help act like glue so this assembly doesn't fall apart when we get it back in. Some marine grease, our keyway is installed on the top of our motor, and now we're going to put our worm gear back on top. Align everything and fit it together. Now, your motor assembly is ready to be reinstalled. I'm going to use a little bit of marine grease just to lubricate this O-ring, to keep everything lubricated and keep it all wet while it's in this housing for years of service to come. Now, as I set this motor in, we have 4 locations to mount the motor back to the frame. Remember, we're lining up these holes with the 2 holes in our frame, so I'm going to try to get a rough alignment as I set this together. Gently work that O-ring back into the chassis, motor and O-ring assembly back into the chassis. You'll feel it fit and notice that travel gear's turning all by itself as it comes back into place. I'm going to line these bolt holes and reinstall everything in the reverse of how I took it apart. My 4mm Allens on both sides of the motor will hold it in place, and I'll put my dust covers back on. Alright, that's got our travel feed motor replaced. Now, while everything's apart, let's talk arm feed motor. The process is the same, but the screw locations are different. You've got one screw that holds the arm feed motor in the front of the chassis and one in the rear of the chassis. Just know it's in a little bit different place. It's not on the side like it is on the travel feed motor. Now, when I take those 2 screws out to rotate and disengage the gear assembly, I'm actually going to take this arm and I'm just going to pull on it and rock on it back and forth. That'll extend this motor up just like we did on this side. That'll release it, we can pull the motor out and service it in the reverse order just like we did over on the travel feed. So just know that's a tip. I don't need to show it to you because it's the same process. Alright, we're going to put everything back together. If you have a friend here, this makes life a lot easier to get this assembly back in place. I'm going to use a pair of needle nose to reach up into the top of this cover housing and grab these wires. Let's make sure we get the red wire to the red wire and the blue wire to the blue wire. Again, these are simple blade style connectors. Make sure you have a good positive engagement as you slide these blades together. I've seen sometimes as people try to change or try to replace these, the blades slip instead of into the connector and into the assembly, they'll actually slide right behind it and not make proper connection. Take your time with this and make sure it's done right. Alright, now as I put these cover housings down, I'm just going to make sure everything's assembled back together in one full assembly. I'm going to seat them back down, making sure I don't pinch any wires, and get those O-rings seated back into place. I'm going to tighten my screws on top, and we've officially changed either our arm feed motor or our travel feed motor. Thanks for using Pintruder. If you have any questions, give us a call. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see customer service phone number, as well as all of our contact information to our technical service team. We'd love to help you if you have any questions. Have a great day.